Good morning, class. This is Mr. Walker here. We are talking about fractions and decimals and how they might interact with our equations. Now, we're going to be going over this on this page and the following page after with seeing these in our equations. The reason being is that we need to make sure that we are straight on fractions before we deal with them popping into our equations. So, let's look at a couple things. All right, on our left, we have a diagram of how to go from a fraction to a decimal and from a decimal to a fraction. And we have underneath some practice concerning them. Okay, so at times we will have to deal with fractions and decimals and percents even when we solve equations. That means that we're going to need to know how to convert between the three of these. Now, most importantly, right now we are dealing with fractions and decimals. When we get to percents, we will deal with them. To the left, there is a quick guide on converting fractions to decimals and vice versa. So from here to here, we know to turn a fraction into a decimal, we divide the numerator by the denominator. To turn a decimal to a fraction, we have to write this as a fraction and then simplify. Now below, we got a couple of fractions here that we are going to turn into decimals, and we are going to simplify those things right up. Now, very simply, what we're just going to do, I'm going to open up a calculator here, and we're going to bust this out quickly, okay? So we want to turn this fraction that we have into a decimal. So we got 4 over 20. That means I need to divide our numerator 4 by our denominator 20. And when we do that, that gives us 0.2. So let's go through, let's click that. We got 0.2. So that's finished right there. Now for the next one, same deal, same stitch. We're just going to do 3 divided by 5, which just gives us 0.6. Now, if you put just 0.6, that's also applicable. I'll accept that. I just put the 0 there in case we have to do any math with it further, okay? And then finally, we got 9 divided by 10. 9 divided by 10, bam, bam, and wham. That gives us 0.9. So that's our first 3 here. Below, you got 6 more, so you guys are going to be working on those on your own. Now, taking a look at our practice on the right, below are some more practice, but we are going to be turning decimals back into fractions. In order for you to convert a decimal into a fraction, you need to look at the place value of the last number in the decimal. The graphic to the left shows us a quick guide of how to do this. So we have 0.1. This 1 is in the tenths place. So if I wanted to turn 0.1 into a fraction, I just take that 1 and I put it over 10. Now if I have this in the hundredths place, I have 0.01. That means that this 1 is in the hundredths place. So that means that it goes over 100. And then furthermore, if we have 0.001, that puts it over the thousands place. Now, once you've converted this decimal into a fraction, you need to reduce the fraction into lowest terms. To the left, I've given you a quick guide on how to do that. You need to make sure that when you do reduce and simplify your fraction, you are dividing your numerator and denominator by the greatest common factor. So in this case, we have 12 and 18. The greatest common factor between these two is 6. So I have to divide 12 by 6 and 18 by 6, which would give me 2 over 3. Now, there's a couple of examples underneath here. We're going to go through 3 of them, just like how we did over here. So, right now I'm looking at 0.83. I look at the last number on my decimal. This is the 3. This is in the hundredths place. So when I put this as a fraction, I have 83 over 100. And we are done here. Now over here, first, we got to look at the last number in our decimal place. We got 0.4. 4 is in the tenths place. So I have 4 over 10. But now that I have this in the decimal, I have to make sure that I can reduce this. Now, the only reason I didn't reduce the previous one is because 83 is a prime number along with 100. So over here, we need to make sure that we got that down packed. So let's take a look at that. So in order for us to divide 4 and 10 by the same number, they both can be divided by 2, which means that if I divide both of these by 2, 4 divided by 2 is 2, and 10 divided by 2 is 5. Means that it is actually 2 over 5. Well, we actually simplify that. So I'm just going to underline that. Now over here we got 0.24. So this 4 is in the hundredths place. So when I write this out, I got 24 over 100. But since these are both even numbers, I can go through and simplify this some more. So I could divide 24 and 100 both by 2. And let's see if there's anything further. Could I do them both? I could divide them both by 4. So let's try 4. So if I divide 24 by 4, that gives me 6. 100 divided by 4 is 25. So this is actually 6 over 25. Now, if you ever want to make sure that your answers before and after you simplify are both equal, you have to divide them both in a calculator. So I'm just going to double check with both of these. So I know 4 divided by 10. When I divide it, it gives me 0.4. If I take 2 and divide it by 5, I also get 0.4. So I got 24 in this case, divided by 100. That's 0.24. And 6 divided by 25, 0.24. So those all work out just how we want them to. Okay, so these remaining parts, you guys are going to go through and do the rest of these examples on your own. Now coming over here, on our next page, we are dealing with operations with fractions in equations. So sometimes in solving equations, we need to conduct operations between fractions. To the left, I've given you a guide of how to go through to do these things. So we know with adding and subtracting with fractions, we need to make sure that and I'm going to zoom in here just in case you can't see, we have to make sure that our denominators are common. So they have to be the same. In order to get a common denominator, I look and see what is the lowest common denominator between the two of these. So in this case, I have 4 and 8. The lowest common denominator is 8. So I have to make sure that I get this 4 to turn into an 8 in its denominator by multiplying it by 2. And since this has this 1 attached, I need to multiply the top by 2 as well. Once I do that, I got 2 over 8, and I add that to what I have over here, 3 over 8. Over here, I do the same thing. I have 6 and 4. I need them to both be the same type of denominator. Their lowest common denominator is 12. So that means that what I do is multiply 6 by 2 to get 12. And I multiply 4 by 3 to get 12. And I do the same thing to their respective numerators. Over here, we add the tops, giving us this 5. And you notice that with the denominators, they both stay the same. Over here, we go through and do the subtraction with the top, giving us this 1. And just like the other one, these denominators stay the same. Now, we're doing through multiplication and division. With multiplication, we multiply straight across with our numerators and straight across with our denominators. And whatever answer we get as a fraction, we go through and reduce. Now, if we do division, you have to invert the divisor and then multiply the numerators. You guys might also know this as keep, change, flip. So that is what you need to do for those different operations. Now, I'll also give you just a quick little, aside. Alternatively, you can convert your fractions into decimals, and then you can do the math between them as those forms. Now below, I want you to go through a couple of these operations with fractions. You can either use the guide to the left or my advice right here, but you have to make sure that you express your answer as a fraction. So what we're going to do both of those two things with these first two examples here. Okay? Actually, I'll do one of each operation because I need to make sure that I get that. All right, so first we got two fractions and we are adding them together. Since they both have different denominators, I need to make them both have the same denominator. So the common denominator between 4 and 5 is 20. That means that no matter what, our answer has a denominator of 20. So I know for me to get 20 from 5, I have to multiply by 4. So that means that the top part will also be multiplied by 4. Over here, in order for me to get that answer as 20, I need to multiply 4 by 5. So that means I have to multiply this 1 by 5. So up top, I have 1 times 5, which is 5. Over here, I have 4 times 4, which is 16. So I have 5 plus 4. 5 plus 4 gives us 21. And let me just get that space fixed up. So 21 over 20. So that's one way we can do this. Another way we can do this is we're going to go through and solve this using our graphing calculator app. So I'm going to open that up on my calculator. Okay. So let's get that over here. So the way that you can do this, my advice was you can turn both of these into decimals and you can do the math between them like this. So I'm going to go through and do that. So I have 5 divided by 7. That gives me this long decimal here. Now I'm going to go through, I'm going to do 1 divided by 3. And that gives me this decimal here. Now you might notice there's a lot going on here. So not all the time is it a feasible thing for you to do. So what we might want to do is keep up with it like how it is here. Another way you can do it though is using some parentheses. So let's use some parentheses. I got 5 divided by 7. I'm going to put that in parentheses. And I'm going to do minus 1 divided by 3. So this is 5 over 7. That's 1 over 3. Now when I do the math between them, it still gives me this crazy n decimal here. And I told you I want you to turn this into a fraction. Now if you remember our way that we went over it earlier, that's going to be a whole lot for us to go through and do. So here's a quick little tip for you. If you notice right here underneath the alpha key, there's a button that says math. What you want to do is click that and hit this first option, frac. What that does is it turns whatever you previously had in the previous line into a fraction. So if I hit math frac, it actually gives me my fraction form of this, 8 over 21. So that's actually pretty handy, pretty easy. Sorry about that, y'all. So that means that this next one is 8 over 21. So we saw that that might be a little simpler way for us to do this. Sometimes we might need to use a calculator, sometimes we might not. In this next case, I'm not going to use one. So we're just multiplying, which means that we need to multiply straight across here and straight across here. So I have 2 times 3, that is 6. I have 5 times 9, which is 45. Now I can see if I can reduce these. I happen to know that I can divide 45 and 6 by 3, which means that this will be a 2 up top. And below, that'll be a 15. So I'm going to just go through. I'm going to make this font a little smaller. There we go. Turns out this would be our final answer. Yep. All right, folks. So I am running out of time on this video. So I'm going to open up a second video, and we're going to be talking about this, and as well as the second page over here with doing the math on this end. All right, people. I'll see you in the next video.